Hello and welcome to the Rhythm Changes podcast. I am your host, Chris Fraser. Thank you for joining me. I just got home from recording this episode with Jodi Proznick, and I gotta say, I'm still buzzing from our conversation. This is a good one, guys. If you know Jodi, you know that she's just so invested in sharing her years of wisdom and advice, invested in fostering community. You know, I just think she's a great artist, and I've looked up to her for many years. So this is one I've been looking forward to for a long time. We delivered. This is a fantastic conversation, I think. I'm excited for you to hear it. Thank you. My guest today is among Canada's premier bassists, a winner of numerous awards and Juno nominations for her contributions to Canada's jazz canon. She's also the director of jazz studies here at the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra School of Music. It's my immense privilege to have my friend Jodi Proznick on the show today. How's it going, Jodi?
It's going great, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thanks for hosting, by the way. We're here at the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra School.
Yes.
Where you are now the director of jazz studies.
Yes.
We were just talking about that, but now I want to have it on record. So this is a new position, correct?
Yes. I've been teaching here for about 12 years.
Yeah.
And it was built, I should get my numbers right. When was it built? I think it was 2012 or 20. Yeah. It was built about just over 10 years ago for sure. Maybe 15. Anyway, I'll have to get my numbers straight. I should know when it was built. I don't remember when it was built, but
details doesn't matter.
Yeah, but I came on board in the first couple of years after it was built, and essentially I had been working with Mark Fewer, who was the concertmaster of the Vancouver Symphony at the time, and then Bramwell Tovey, Maestro Tovey. I had done a few concerts with them. Mark became a good friend when he lived here in town, and he's one of these wonderful Renaissance musicians that can weave in different genre. So anyway, he and I had a relationship. I met Bramwell through Mark, and then when they were building out the program here, Bramwell asked if I would start a jazz program for the school.
Wow.
So we started with a jazz workshop, and we were trying to get people to show up to it. So Bramwell actually sent his two daughters
really?
who played cello and violin. And
wow.
We launched in 2012 the jazz workshop the first year. And then it's been building ever since to the point where it's become such a big program that the board created an official position here as director of the program.
Awesome.
So I'm officially on salary. As I said, I was dating this program for a long time, and we finally got married.
You made it official.
Made it official.
Wow. Congratulations, you two.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. So far, it's been great. We're in the honeymoon period. It's great. It's great times.
Awesome. Yeah. So when was that official then?
I started in September.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, I started in September. There was, the program had just grown so much. We started off with one little ensemble in our first year of a mix of like 12-year-old kids and 50-year-old women. It was kind of awesome. And the jazz
Honestly,
workshop.
That's not far off from most jazz programs.
Yeah, right.
You know?
Exactly. It's kind of what's happening these days. Yeah. And then the jazz workshop was really successful. That first year we had a small but mighty crew, and it's grown ever since. And now we're pretty much sold out every year. We have two weeks, and have had multiple. Now we're starting to bring in some guest artists to the program in the summer and whatnot. So,
it's popular.
Yeah, it's popular.
It's popular.
Yeah, I've
had several students who like got into it through that program.
Amazing. Yeah. Oh, that makes my heart so happy. Yeah, I really, I think when I was building, it's very rare you get a chance to start an educational program from scratch.
Yeah. Yeah, truly. Yeah, like usually it's inherited, right?
Yeah,
like
you get hired in, and there's already a curriculum, and there's a team of teachers, and that can be really awesome and wonderful in its own way. But they were basically like, you carte blanche, like build it out.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So, so it's.
Is that something you ever like really like saw yourself like wanting to do? Like,
yes.
Yeah.
I remember working. I taught at CAP for 10 years, CAP U, and then I taught at KPU as well for a number of years. And I remember thinking to myself, there's a lot of good stuff that was happening at both programs, but sometimes there's sort of institutional stuff that can be a bit glitchy or problematic at times. Yeah. And I remember thinking to myself, if I could just start something from scratch, it would be really fun to see what happens. Yeah. And so I got the chance to do that here. And also, the beautiful thing about the program is that because we're a conservatory or a community music school, we don't have the pressure of grading or juries or that kind of energy, which can change the dynamic and the feeling about the process. Where here it's like the process is the point, and you can come here and you can be wherever you're at. We take all levels, and you get to come and hang out with some of the finest musicians who are also really generous people. Yeah. And we all kind of hold it loosely and let the story unfold in the timing it's meant to. So it's it has all the beautiful things about a really robust jazz program. Yeah. The high level of teachers and the really good information without a lot of those sort of institutional challenges that come from the grading process and the assessment process and accreditation and all that. Totally.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like that's, I mean, what you're describing is probably like the dream scenario for a lot of people who are like, educators at heart, right? Like, because what you want to be able to do is create when you're, in my experience as I've only, taught guitar. I've done like a couple clinics here and there over the years, but like my thing has just been, teaching the one-on-one guitar lessons. But even in my experience that way, I understand that the main thing that will get students to open up and be available, to you as students, to like be ready to learn and ready to listen to and like take you seriously, is the environment, right? So if you have that, that's probably the hardest thing to control if you go into an institution, right? Because you have, everything's already there, right? All of the structures and figures are already there. There's so little that you can control from where you are, right? Like that's no surprise or there's no secret or anything, right? So it is really great to hear, especially for you, because I know how you are as a teacher. So to see that you've been able to just kind of create your own program that's so separate from all of that other stuff is really great, because I feel like it's perfect. It's like a perfect situation, because
certainly for me, I think it's been a real blessing in my life for sure. Yeah. There was a lot of things about assessment. For example, like just for bass students, for example, you get a bass student in their first year, and the level of access to information ranges. Yeah. Each student will have different, just different access to theory knowledge or technical training on the instrument. Yep. And by the end of your first year, everyone's meant to be kind of standardized at this point. Yeah. And with bass playing especially, I'm sure it's the same with guitar, sometimes it's actually just fixing some of the physical technical stuff that we can't be leaning into like altered scales and diminished scales or playing a bunch of hard tunes before you're holding your arm properly or you're unwinding your shoulders because your shoulders are in the wrong spot. So that part was, we ended up having to launch into things without addressing some just, I think it's like gardening. I use garden analogies all the time. It's like the fertilizer for success. So much of that is just physical posture. Technique. How are you breathing? Technical stuff.
Yeah.
And then basic ear training and or theory knowledge that's very, like, can you play your triads and all the inversions over a tune? Like, you know, can you play roots through a tune? Can you play your roots and fifths? And this is this scaffold type approach.
Right.
And that's one of the things, I mean, we could do a whole 2 hours just on pedagogy and curriculum design and 2025 and what we're dealing with in terms of students. But a lot of the success I've had as an educator is because here I'm able to pace things out and address what is in the moment with each student and not just feel like I had to get them to a certain point right away without understanding that if you skip stuff, you're actually impeding flow and growth and fun. Ultimately, this is about having a lot of fun and expressing yourself and feeling good when you play. And so I mean, the system is designed in a way that's assuming a lot. Like, students are coming in with certain skills already there. Very rarely do they have them, and then they just feel stressed out that they don't and feel bad. And then there's not always a lot of patience.
Well, they're focused on outcome, right?
Yeah, those outcome focused.
Yeah,
totally.
And so that's something that I feel like we see eye to eye on this, because it's something I sometimes have to. I have to talk to parents about where it's like, I just need you not to focus on outcome because it's not all it's made out to be. Outcome is, you're never going to see like what you want if you are expecting some kind of outcome. What you want is to work on the process, and you want to work on making it fun. That's a big thing for me, and that's why I talk about environment too. It's like making sure that not only is it fun, but it's comfortable. People feel comfortable enough because music is a very intimate thing to express. So like, if you're seeing me for half an hour a week or something like that, I have to put in work to make sure that you feel comfortable enough to learn with me. Yeah. Right. So that's like in my experience, that's like most of the battle.
Totally.
Right? Like you can like just tell someone they have to learn something. And a lot of the time, if they're focused, like they'll make themselves do it. But also it's dangerous because people can become resentful of that time they spend playing their instrument, which is a sad thing. Because to me, I love playing guitar. I've always loved playing guitar. I'm always happy to play guitar. And I feel lucky to feel that way because I know a lot of great musicians who became very disillusioned with their instrument after they went through school and for whatever reason. But yeah, I think that environment is so important. And yeah, like what you say, like just focusing on like the basics and making sure that they're really getting these things, because there's so much like expectation and like, it's I'm sure you've seen a lot of the time where you're trying to explain something, maybe you're like kind of in the middle of like explaining some big concept, and then suddenly it becomes clear that the student is totally lost. That's the worst feeling in the world as a teacher, right? Because you're like, oh, I dropped the ball somewhere, right? I let them. They're out on a raft in the ocean by themselves right now. Yeah, like, that shouldn't be it. I'm supposed to be guiding you, and I can't just like go. I can't just like sail away without you. Yeah, right. Totally.
And I think a big part of that acknowledgement is also like for me, it's about attunement. So it's the same energy as when you're playing with people. Yeah. It's like, our friend Phil Dwyer calls it the satellite dishes, right? Okay. You have satellite dishes, and where are they pointing? Are they pointed in at yourself? Yeah. Or are they turned out toward what's happening around you? Are you tuning in to pick up the the signal from what the student is actually doing and saying or feeling, or what and also assessing too. I also think of it kind of like you're almost like a doctor when you're teaching. You're like, okay, I'm assessing what's happening right now, and I want this all to feel better. It's not just, I said to Otto Tausk, our conductor here the other day, I mean, I said the goal for the school isn't just about excellence, which we are interested in excellence, but we want to feel excellent.
Yeah.
Totally. How can you feel excellent while achieving excellence?
Yeah, they do seem to be at odds.
Well, I think it's silly that they're at odds.
Yeah.
If we have to reimagine what it means to practice. What does it mean to be rehearsing?
Yeah.
And in a way, jazz music in particular at its core is a medicinal art form. It's about people gathering.
Yeah.
And having this sort of medicinal experience.
Well, it's funny, because when I was talking to John Gross on this podcast, I remember we were talking about Thelonious Monk and John Coltrane, and I was like, apparently, John Coltrane was just like at Thelonious's apartment like every day for hours just practicing songs. And to me, that was like novel. And to John, who, who's been playing this music since the late 50s, he was like, well, that's how you learned people's music. That's how you played the music. You would just go to each other's houses and just play the music together. That's just, you would do that every single day. That's just how you played. And that actually was like kind of mind blowing to me, because it except for maybe like, my experience when I was a cap, the only time I get to play with other people is when I like just book time with them, right? I find the time in my schedule to be able to like have a session, and I book time with them. And if everybody can do it, then we, find a space and we play. Yeah. And, that's like a whole amount of effort and admin work to do. And the idea of it just being like, no, you just get together and you play. And it being a gathering thing, and it just being like, we're hanging out and we're playing, and this is just what we all do all the time. It's, I wish that was more normal.
Yeah. Right.
Because it feels right.
It feels right. I mean, that's one of the things here. Like, I think one of the successes of our program is that I've been laser focused on community. It's a community building. So we have monthly jam sessions. We had one monthly jam session for adults. 25 people showed up at it. Yeah. It's just my awesome. Jam classes, which just there. It's such a community. Yeah. I play drums too, which is hilarious. But I do find that like, that's one of the things about my teaching here is I'm always playing with students. So I have to play drums or piano,
that's awesome.
With them. That's, very Victor Wooten. It's like about having the conversation, having the musical conversation is where the learning happens, right? So I feel like, and even when I taught at KPU, and it was primarily a classical program. It was a classical program, and I was the crazy jazz lady who taught the jazzy courses.
That's common enough. That's
it's like I was like the tiger at the petting zoo. I like to say. We would do all kinds of weird things. But I remember when we were talking about how to maintain like a lot of the students would stay for 2 years and then take off and weren't sticking around for third and fourth year. And I remember sitting in a meeting saying, just give me the first year theory. Like, I'll do the fundamental theory class. Like, just, I think if we curate it in a way where it feels like we're a community of learners, my guess is they'll fall in love with each other and they won't want to leave their community. They're like, well, why would I leave? These are my people. Yeah. And that's a very, at its core, that's a very jazz musician. It's the hang. It's about the hang and play music together and co-creating. This is really joyful, beautiful thing.
Yeah.
hanging out with, we're part of this beautiful community.
Yeah.
I mean, you might not see someone for a year and you see them and it's like, oh my gosh. Because, we all fall in love with each other playing together and jamming together.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
What happens.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I'm like, what happens if I sort of bring that little bit of that idea of like the culture around the community and we would do things like the final class would be, a potluck or we would, if it was a beautiful day, I would grab the whiteboard and we just go out to the park and like I'd lecture my theory.
That's
like
awesome.
I'm like doing surprising things or fun things as sort of, hosting jam sessions or I always have like an open door in my office and tea and people could come in and hang out and chat or whatever. So and of course, the program, for financial reasons, all kinds of reasons, ended up getting the intake was paused and it was eventually canceled. But there were maybe one or two people sticking around third, fourth year. But by the time I left, we had a full cohort with a waiting list.
Wow.
And I swear to you that what happens when we really focus in on creating community at this place.
Yeah.
That's the joy. That's the beauty of this school. That's what makes it special is it's small and we can all really care about each other. And, and it actually really worked. And that's what I feel happened here, especially starting with the workshops, is that, we start off our workshop with a core value assessment, like, what are the values of the community?
Yeah.
And we make it very clear that this is a place of support. We're here to support each other, not judge each other. Yeah. And although the judging and the getting in the ring and, the tough tenor battles and all that stuff, that is part of the music. And sometimes I wonder, like there's not a whole lot of that vibe around here. But then some of my students get out into the real world and realize, oh, wow, there's some really tough energy out there as well, which I'm sure you've been privy to and experienced. So, but I feel like when you have this like base level feeling of connectivity to yourself and the people around you, and you've felt that enough in your formative years, you can weather the tricky times a bit more. And I know, like for me, I grew up, my dad was a band teacher. Our band room was the community center, and we all just hung out in the band room. And that sense of feeling that community and those endorphin experiences where you're in buses together and traveling together and doing band trips and jamming in the room and whatever, all the dramas and everything, that feeling has been the fuel really for my whole career of just like, how do I create that feeling in my own life? How do I bring that, that sense when I am in charge of an educational space? Like, how do I create that sense of connectivity with each other? Because to my mind, that's the whole point of it, right? Like, yeah, it is about your own individual voice and that's in there too, but ultimately the individual voice is held up by the community and supported by the community. Every time you take a solo, the rhythm section is supporting. It's there to hold you up and to ultimately bring out the best in you. And I think at its ideal, at its highest level, jazz music and any sort of like folk-based improvisational music is an element. There are elements of medicinal qualities, the collective, the circle, the community, and lifting people up. Also giving voice to giving opportunity for unique voices to thrive. I mean, we have our monks and we have our Louis Armstrongs and we have our John Coltrane and our Sonny Rollins and our Miles Davis versus Dizzy. Like, they are unique and they are celebrated. And that's the point. That's the beauty of it.
Like, you can't lift those voices up if you don't have a community that's open to someone doing something new, right? And so if people are concerned that there isn't enough ingenuity in the scene or anything like that, then maybe it's time to like look at the scene and be like, what are we doing to allow people to do something that sounds unlike anything else that we're doing? Because it's easy. Well, it's not easy, but it's, it's been done, and it can be done to just play what is expected and, play within the tradition, not to besmirch that, because I love to play within the tradition and play the old tunes and everything like that. But also there's, I'm sure with you too, there's part of me that wants to do something new, right? And how can you get there without being able to be confident to like do the sort of trust fall into your community, right?
Yes.
Right?
I feel like Vancouver actually is pretty good at this. Like,
I think so.
Generally. I think that's one of the reasons why when we were deciding where to move, we decided to move here, because it did feel like there were these bands, these cohorts that were doing original music and kind of committing to each other in a really interesting, deep, long-term way. I mean, we have bands in town who've been playing together including my own, have been playing together forever and ever and ever. There's sort of a commitment to a perspective, to a voice, to a journey. I think that's happening more now out east. At the time, though, it was a lot more sort of hierarchical when we were there, I would say, where, you wanted the older musicians to approve of you and hire you for stuff and give the validation to the scene. And I think that that's also an important, like, looking to the elders, not rejecting that outright, but I often say to my students as they're heading off into the world, like, all the older musicians who have established themselves have a lot of really great things to say, and a lot of wisdom. And when you're younger, it's important to listen. It's important to, with humility, and then some things might resonate with you more than others, and you just hold it all lightly, but just to stay open to what they have to offer, for sure. Rejecting it outright is foolish, but also like giving yourself away 100% to their perspective is also foolish.
I think there has it could be because of the institutionalization of the music itself, but there is sort of like this paternalistic built-in like need to please the older generation, right? You want to be doing something and feel validated by them showing up and nodding lightly to your solo, right? Like, and trust me, I've felt that way, but it's not the be all end all, right?
No, it's part of the story. And again, like, I do feel like sometimes there can be like a wholesale rejection of like, well, the older people are just this or that or da da da. I think that's also very, very foolish, because that there's an arrogance in that of like, well, you're not this and you're not that, and you're just not with it, and things have changed, man. Yes, but also like, we're all standing on the shoulders of what has come before. That is the story of this
the current
music.
Change was precipitated by the change that they did.
Exactly. And also, you have to try different things on. It's like costumes or colors, before you can find your voice.
I like that, yeah.
And find out what colors look best on you, or what you feel comfortable wearing.
Because you might not expect it.
You might not expect it. So just being open.
Yeah, that's true.
And curious. Now, I would say there's always two hats you can wear. You can wear your fan hat. There's going to be stuff that calls you. Like, you're just like, oh my gosh, I love this.
Yeah.
I'm being called to this music. This music is lighting me up. I just love it.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then there's the hat that's super important as an artist, which is the curious learner.
Yeah.
And the curious learner hat, you are constantly it's like wide-eyed and curious.
Yeah.
and asking lots of questions and not writing anything off. Because even the stuff that isn't calling you, it may not be just not yet, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm sure we all have albums where, you know, when you heard it at 14 versus 24 versus 34,
Mm-hmm.
words, like I used to not listen to lyrics ever. Like
Yeah.
I just didn't. And as I've gotten older, I've
Yeah.
started writing them, right? Like it just, things change. So, yeah. And also, I mean, I just know the evolution with my own playing. I mean, I came staunchly in the beginning. I was like, Oscar Peterson, like straight ahead, swingy ding, like loved it. That's what I wanted to do. That's what I felt like I was leaning into and loved and was inspired by. Then I inched into, you know, Paul Chambers and you know, Wilbur Ware and Sam Jones and Oscar Petterford and like kind of the bebop bass players. And then when I went to write my first album at 33, all the stuff was coming out that was not that. I mean, there's some of that on it, but lots of stuff that was not that. I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Where is this other stuff coming from? Because I also loved Wayne Shorter, and I loved Penny Wheeler, and I loved Joni Mitchell, and I loved, you know, and Duke Ellington and Oscar and all these things. But this... Peter Gabriel. I mean, there's pop artists I love. I mean, I would never have admitted in my undergrad. Was like, oh, I listened to hide my pop records underneath my bed. Like, don't admit.
Yeah.
But you know, we're all an assimilation of our lived experience, and when we stop editing it out to please other people and bring in the fullness of your lived experience, and all of your love, the things that call to your heart, and incorporate that in your art, that's when magical stuff happens. Really, that's when the voice shows up. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I loved all of that. But yeah, that was
sorry. That was my soliloquy.
No, that was amazing.
That
was amazing. Because I totally agree with that. It's one of those things where you're like, you know, man, like, you know, you're a kid and you hear Cannibal Adderley on Kind of Blue for the first time, and you're just like, dude, this guy is like the man. This is like so cool. It's like bebop language and it's bluesy. It's like, you know, like this is, you know, and you fall in love with that sound. And then later on you realize like, oh, he was like doing like funk soul music in the 70s, right? They all went through some sort of major sort of like taste evolution, right? And like if you count it, it's like, you know, like in their late 30s, 40s, like something changes, right? Even like you imagine like someone like Wayne Shorter, who could probably play something absolutely fully unique on Stella by Starlight every single time he played it for the rest of his life. And even then he was still like, no, I gotta make a Steely Dan record. Right? Like,
right. Well, I think, you know, it's interesting. If you think about becoming a musician like an apprentice versus master craftsman, if you think of it that way, you know, in our early years, we are apprentices, you know, we want to work alongside people who have the craft down. That's why we go to school, right? And then over time and experience and lived experience and life experience, not just on the bandstand, but off the bandstand, you it's like your craft becomes deeper, becomes more flowing. And then you can start to get more innovative and or be less concerned about what your maybe your mentor or your is concerned about. And there's always tension around that. I know there has been tension for me. You know, the first record, I always tell this story, involves Kate Hammett Vaughan when I was about to do Foundations, the first album, which is almost 20 years old.
Oh my gosh.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I should do a reissue on vinyl or something. Anyway.
Good idea.
So
you could do that.
I was so nervous. I was so nervous about making a record because I was afraid that it was not enough of this or that or this or that. Like the people who like this kind of music will be like, what are you doing with that?
Totally.
And then the people who I'm like, nothing's in 7. Like, you know, like it's all 3, 4, 4,
That's so
4.
real.
Oh my gosh.
True. You're,
Like, I'm not getting, it's
Oh
not
my
hip enough,
gosh.
right?
yeah.
I remember being
Oh
at a
my
party
gosh.
at Kate Yvonne's house. It was a group of actually women in the community that had gathered. And I remember saying this to Kate. And I'd be like, Kate, I'm so freaked out that people are going to hate it, that it's not enough. I'm writing songs. I don't feel equipped or qualified.
Yeah.
And her advice to me was so perfect that I have to share it with everybody listening.
Please, yeah.
Which is make an album you want to listen to.
Yeah. Easy.
Yeah. And she said, you cannot control what other people are going to think or say. Just do what feels right for you, that speaks to your own tastes.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay. So I thought, so that first album was kind of like journal entries in what in a variety of ways, like little vignettes of like life, whether it was, you know, I love Peter Gabriel, so I put a Peter Gabriel song on there, or Joni Mitchell, I put a Joni Mitchell song.
Yeah.
I love Duke Ellington, put a Duke Ellington song, you know, an homage to Ray Brown through Ray Downs, so that connection to Montreal. Like, they all have these like little stories behind the song, each song. And I was absolutely shocked when it was so well received, because the whole time I was like it was such a shock. I was like, I suck.
It's honest.
You know. Yeah, I was like, we just did our thing, and I just Yeah, and I mean, and then the other part was that at the time, you know, Tilden's my husband and Jesse's my brother-in-law, and Steve and Tilden go back from when they were like 14 years old. Yep. So, you know, that other piece, which is the connection, like that sense of like people who care about each other, making music together. There's a softening that happens, and an openness that happens when you're playing with your friends.
Totally.
And then the other piece is this idea of like, even though like I'm a white gal from the suburbs of Vancouver, very removed from the source experience, that I can bring my own lived experience to this music. That's actually the point, is to bring your lived experience and integrate it with the lessons of those elders, you know.
Totally.
And then, you know, and then the art speaks for itself, and, you know, it was very well received, and obviously, you know, crazy Juno nominations and all that stuff, which was not the
crazy
goal. Well, it was never the goal, right? The goal ultimately was like, I just want to make a record I'd like to listen to, that I can be proud of.
Wow.
Listen to without like cringing, you know. Yeah. and that was the goal. So I mean, that's the hot take for people making records is, and also I'm really glad I waited. I personally was glad I waited till I was in my 30s before we did that. I wouldn't have been ready. I'm a slow mover in terms of my growth and development with this music. You know, it was not fast. It was kind of just one gig at a time.
Make a record ever.
Yeah, I know. But like some of the best band leaders in the world are historically were the bass players. You know, Charles Mingus being one. So you know, Dave
but
Holland.
like you're batting above the average for bass players, I think, on leading groups.
Oh, yeah, it was accidental. I mean, I didn't pick the bass because I wanted to be a leader or ever solo. Yeah. So I just wanted to believe.
Well, you failed in both of those.
I know. And I mean, again, like you can't, you have no idea this is where you have to hold the whole journey lightly. Cause you don't
so
know
that's actually interesting though, right? Because like if you really were just, you know, if your whole thing like was you just want to hold it down. Yeah. Then what do you think it is that makes it so that suddenly you're compelled to lead a group? Suddenly you're compelled to play a solo?
Oh God. Well, I was actually just out with my pal, Rob Hamilton. I don't know if you know Rob. He's a great musician and, you know, a company owner on the scene. He owns Side One. Anyway, we went to high school together. Okay. And I mean, essentially I was the bass player in the grade. And so we did our first little gigs in high school, and I refused to solo. I was just like, I had no interest in soloing at all, and no interest in band leading at all. I just wanted to show up and play the bass and have everyone take care of all that stuff and just try and lay it down. And so I remember vividly the moment I first took a solo, quote unquote, which is they just stopped playing and looked at me. And I just kind of did a walk-in solo and a little thing, and I was like terrified. I was like, like, I don't want to solo, guys. And they're like tough, basically. Yeah. So it's always been these awesome dudes in my life who were like, get over yourself. Yeah. The other awesome dude would be my husband, who I remember when we first started dating, because he was doing his master's and I was an undergrad, and he's like, we had finished this. He was coaching a ensemble. I was auditing the class, so he wasn't actually my teacher, but he was there helping, and everybody laughed. And he's like, "Let's play a tune," and I was like, "No, I'm not playing with you." And he's like, "What do you mean? Pick up your bass." I was like, "No, I'm scared." He's like, "Pick up your bass. We'll just play a blues." Yeah. And so he just made me play with him, like made me do it, and I played, and it was fine. And then we started actually, like, we practice, and then we get together and play some tunes. And he was always really generous with, things he understood that I wasn't quite there yet, and he would share his information with me. It was always really amazing. And then all the way along, I just had, and really Corey was another one who gave me tons of opportunities. Professors at McGill who were hiring me for gigs at a university and giving me opportunities. I couldn't have imagined these things for myself. It was always someone tapping me on the shoulder and saying, "Come on, let's go play." Yeah. And me like, okay. So like there wasn't, especially my early years, it was very accidental. I was just saying yes to things, even though sometimes I'm very scared of it. But I would do it anyway, and I would get through it, and then I'd get better. And Weeds putting me in these unbelievable situations with legendary people very young and surviving. Yeah. Again, I didn't know. Yeah. So it was all very reluctant. Now, in terms of the band, ultimately at the time Steve Caldestat lived in London, he would come visit. Right. And we would just put a kind of a gig together because he was in town, and Corey was like, you need to record this band. And I was like, well, I put it together because I was just sort of the band secretary, but I didn't imagine I was the actual leader. But then I said to Jesse and Tilden, like, do you guys who wants to lead the band? Tilden, you should be. He's like, I don't want to lead. Jesse was like, nope. And Steve was like, I live in London. So I'm like, okay, I guess I'll lead the band. So it was really only because you
need a name.
Well, we're like Jodi Proznick. Okay, fine. Yeah. So, and also then I thought, I guess there's not many gals playing jazz, so it's a bit of a niche thing. So I guess I can be the band leader. But that first record, Tilden wrote and arranged a number of the tunes on it. I think it was Steve that suggested All Too Soon. It was pretty communal, the first one, for sure, in that, I wrote some songs, Tilden wrote some songs, and, Tilden and I mixed and co-produced it. So he was very much involved. He just didn't want to be officially the... So, really, really, really accidental. Really, really accidental. And then all of a sudden it was nominated for a Juno, and we got all this attention. I was like, freaking out.
Well, part of me wonders... I think it's probably pretty common with artists, but if there's you have from what you're describing, it seems like you have a resistance to do things that you excel at. And not to psychoanalyze or anything.
I don't feel like I was excelling. That was the thing the whole way along. I think you were. I was like...
You were,
though.
You did very, very well.
Well, but it was just sort of wide-eyed and like, okay, I guess I'm. Yeah, I think part of it.
But at that point, you're 33. You have several years under your belt.
Yeah.
You've gone to school. You've been playing the heck out of the bass for a long time.
Yeah.
And you're,
Yeah, I was reluctant. These gigs. It was mixed. I think part of me knows that I'm a leader at heart. Like,
Yeah.
I actually am a teacher.
Yeah.
I can organize things and
You can organize things, but you can also, you're very good at establishing the vibe.
creating vibe. Yeah.
Creating vibe.
Curating and
you're very good at
experience.
making the environment relaxing and an environment where there are low stakes.
Yeah.
I remember when, I studied with you at CAP
Yes.
as a secondary PMI.
Yes.
And I didn't want to learn bass. I just wanted to play
Yeah,
guitar.
that's super
I just wanted
fun.
to play tunes. And I did go in with that
In
idea.
that little closet in the middle, like
really,
no windows.
The smallest possible room you could fit two people into.
It was like a jail cell, but we had
It
fun
really
in there.
was.
I wonder if
We
still
managed
use
to,
that
we
room.
managed
We
to.
did. We had fun.
And that's-
it was like
and that actually speaks to your
it's like
vibe
a
setting.
cozy closet.
Yeah, exactly. That speaks to your vibe. We're talking about playing in a gulag and we're laughing about it. So yeah. So you did a good job there. And I remember our first lesson, because I went into it being like, oh my God, I'm going to study with Jodi. This is going to be awesome. I'm scared. I'm terrified. I wonder what she's going to say about my playing. Like, I'm not sure if I've never, I was thinking about like, can I play guitar trio? Because that was like a really daunting thing to me at the time, where it's like, you've got to cover so much stuff. I wasn't sure if I really had any of that under my fingers yet. So I was really just diving in. I was like, man, this is going to be fun, but I'm also like kind of scared of Jodi, which is so funny to say in retrospect,
funny.
obviously.
Yeah,
but I was like 20 years
Fair,
old, right?
Fair.
And,
I get it.
And in our first lesson, you're like, okay, so before we do anything, you get an A+. You're getting an A+. You don't have to worry about, we're not doing grades, okay? We're not doing grades. We're just going to play tunes. And I was like, huh?
Yeah.
I was like, that's not, because I went into CAP straight out of high school, right? So like
Yeah.
I was just used to grades. I was used to PMI, like pink sheet PMI, playing all the stuff, getting better. I was very focused on getting better at that point, right? And so that's all that I knew was just like, I'm at point A and, in 3 months, I'm going to be at point B. And so just like having that weight lifted was actually like huge. It was like, it was just like something I hadn't experienced yet in like a school setting. You just being like, don't worry about it. We're just going to play.
Yeah.
And like, that was great. And I had a great time. I had a great time in those lessons, even though, I think there's like 5 of them.
Yeah.
But like,
I'm so glad.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this gets back to vibe and community. And like, I know for me, I play my best when my nervous system is chill.
Yeah.
I can play well when my nervous system is not.
Yeah.
But it's not coming
You
from,
can run on adrenaline, but you're going to be digging in.
And it's I overplay and I'm not really present for what's happening.
Yeah, because your mind is racing.
My mind's racing. I'm thinking thoughts. So I know that having worked with all of those legendary people, like on that stellar stage and beyond, or playing with the VSO and soloing solo bass in front of, doing insane things, insane. I've had insane experiences with like,
I've heard
very,
stories.
very, the George Coleman's and the Ed Thickpens
I
and
wasn't going to say.
you ask yourself like, how do you get ready for game day, and ultimately it has to do with your nervous system, like keeping your nervous system as regulated as you can.
Mm-hmm.
And what I came to realize is that there were some musicians who helped me feel more regulated and some that did not.
Right.
And
and that's normal. You're not going to get along with everybody.
You're not going to, and it's not even about getting along. It's about sort of energy and vibe.
Yeah.
I remember working with, David Fathead Newman. His vibe was just so generous. Peter Bernstein, one of the most generous musicians.
I love that record.
And he is, I think that you can listen to that record and you can tell that we're all really grounded and regulated.
Yeah.
And
it's actually amazing how like
we're just on it.
gelled
Yeah.
that record
and
sounds.
and I mean, Tilden and Jesse and I have been playing together a long time, and that helps. We had so much respect for him,
Yeah.
but he carries himself in such a respectful way.
Yeah.
I mean, we're just these three, a rhythm section from Vancouver, Canada.
Yeah.
He's Peter Bernstein is arguably one of the greatest guitar players on the planet.
Yeah.
And it's just about the music.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just about the music. And we could deliver for him, and he knew that. And so there was no worry energy or anxious energy or it was just super positive.
Yeah.
And again, like the music reflects that. You hear it. You hear it in the music.
Yeah.
Now,
now,
are we good?
Yeah.
Are we better? Are we this? Are we that?
No.
Can we hang? Da da da. All of that, like with it doesn't. I mean, I just listened to that record and I'm like, yeah, he brought out the best in us. So the question becomes, for those of us who are in positions of band leading or teaching at the biggest level or at the smallest level, how do I then in turn pay that forward?
Yeah.
When those legendary musicians have treated me with such generosity of spirit and respect.
Yeah.
And I know that brought out the best in my playing.
Yeah.
Then it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
My job as a band leader, as a curator, as an educator, as a member of our community is to bring a vibe that brings out the best in people as best as I can. And that is a very simple thing. It's just looking at people and treating them with dignity and respect.
Totally, yeah.
No matter where they're at.
Yeah.
No matter where they're at.
And it doesn't take much.
It doesn't take much. I mean, that's my vibe. Now, not everybody works that way. Some people might argue, well, this is tough and people need tough love sometimes, and maybe being friendly and kind is not always the best. Maybe sometimes they need tough love and blah, blah, blah. And like maybe, and that's your vibe, cool. Like be you. But I know for me, based on my own life experience, for the kind of person I am, I have had tough love teachers. They actually were really effective with me too, because I'm a bit of a perfectionist. I don't like looking foolish. So I will work for people like that.
Yeah.
And that's fine. And university, there needs to be some of that. I mean, we can't, I think too, you can be a little too helicopter parent about it all. And I don't feel like I am helicopter parent. I mean, I tell people, I give people constructive feedback, but I'm very cognizant, like, this is for you to get better, to deepen your relationship with music. This isn't about me exerting power over you. Like, I don't really care.
Yeah.
It's your relationship. You're having a love affair with music.
Yeah,
it's your relationship with music.
Yeah.
It may or may not be more fun to play for me, but the tune will end in 2 minutes, and maybe it was fun, maybe it wasn't, and there's ways to improve. But yeah, it's and it was those experiences with those absolutely brilliant musicians, who had this vibe that I was like, it made me realize they gifted me the understanding that I actually maybe had something to offer.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, they're treating me as though I actually matter and I have something to offer.
Yeah.
And that's a very empowering feeling.
Totally, yeah.
It's very empowering.
Absolutely.
And so, like, how do I duplicate that? Because I think in general, just with the planet at large, this idea of looking at people and letting them know that you're an island of stability and that you're a safe place is what a lot of people crave and need right now. Mm-hmm. Including musicians. Even when you're saying, you got to work on your time feel, or hey, your way you're articulating your eighth notes, it's backwards. You're leaning into the downbeat. You need to or whatever. Or you're not making that change there. Bar 4 or 5. Yeah, you need to. Let's work on your guide tones, whatever. You're hearing me criticize, but it's not. It's still generous. It's like there's a generosity.
It's honesty.
It's honest, but it's it's not coming from a place of
Well,
I'm so angry at you for not being better in this moment. Whatever. That doesn't help.
The number of times it would have been useful for me to for someone with your level of experience to articulate exactly what it is that they would like me to do.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have gotten that, and some people aren't equipped for that, or aren't necessarily willing to just like give up that level of information, right? Because there is, it could be subliminal, it could be accidental, but I think there is, a certain level with certain people. There's like pride with like having that information, right? And it's like,
you got to work hard for it.
Yeah. It's just
yourself,
like, maybe you got to, you have to earn this, you have to earn this information, right?
Yeah.
And again, like, I'm not saying that that's like a malicious thing. I'm saying that is something that's learned, right?
Yeah.
But it can be, like what you're talking about is actually quite rare. So like having, I think that's tough love, right? Like just being like very, very honest with somebody, if maybe they're not necessarily asking for the information, right? But they are in a situation where they may be given the information. And
well, I'm going to preface that with I would never say that to anyone on a gig ever.
Oh yeah.
Like, if we're playing a gig, in fact, I've had some younger musicians like give us feedback, and I'm like, no, like here we're peers, like we're just we are where we're at, and like I'm just playing the tune. Like I'm not analyzing what you're doing while we're playing the tune. I'm just responding to what's happening. Yeah. So I feel like I do so much teaching that and adjudicating in clinics that, in those spaces, like I can zero in on things and give somebody something very specific to practice. It's like, if you do this 10 minutes a day, blah, 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 you will clean up this thing that needs to be dressed.
Right.
And that's from years and years and years and years of doing it.
That's huge.
But
that's
quite
huge
honestly, like I come from 2 teacher parents.
Yeah.
And I always imagined I would be a teacher. I did 2 degrees in education. I dropped performance to be in education. I did a master's in education. So the educator hat in me is very, very strong. And I've over the years realized that creativity in those spaces is exactly the same as whether I'm making an album or leading a band. It's sort of a mindset. It's kind of a value, like, values. Like, what are your core values, and how do you implement them in all the different pieces of your professional life, whether it's managing my team here at the school, or, leading all the bands, or co-leading bands, or being a part of a project as a side person and knowing when to lead and when to sit back, and anyway.
And I like the how you said, treating the people you're playing with as peers, because that is again, like, that's what is going to lower the stakes.
Yes,
right?
And I had that, like, the minute I was graduated from university and was being hired by some of the professors, they weren't giving me feedback on gigs. They just treated me like
that's the feedback.
Band member. That's the feedback. Now it's over to you, professional.
Yeah.
Like,
you're enough.
It out. Yeah. Just like, and I mean, occasionally, Greg Clayton, who is one of my absolute, I love him so much. He's a wonderful guitar player in Montreal, and I played with him almost 5 nights a week for 2 years, and he knew every song in the book, and occasionally he would say, "Hey, Jodi, you know how to get from the 1 chord to the 2 chord? You can go 1 4 3 6, or 1 2 3 flat 3 diminished to 2, or like in between tunes. And just follow me, I'll show you." And I'd be like, "Cool." Like he would lob like
crazy?
A golden nugget.
You know what's crazy? You taught me that.
I know that to go into the 2 chord.
Yeah,
like all the different ways.
And you know what? I try to teach that as much as I can.
Exactly. It's like, oh, listen up. What are all your options? What are all your turnaround options?
Yeah.
I mean, he would, if I wasn't quite getting it, he would share, but it was never, ever in a way that made me feel bad. I felt so loved and so respected, and so encouraged. And again, like it and I grew so much from that environment. I mean, so much. I learned so many tunes. I started trusting my ears more. And I mean, I can't. And this is the other thing is like, I wish in town there was more opportunities for younger musicians to get to play with older musicians. I think the younger musicians, and they're starting to do that more, should be hiring them more veteran-y people, like, you know, and also vice versa, the older musicians playing. I mean, I know for me, like playing with Nick and Noah these days, you know, Noah's in his 20s and Nick's 30, and Shruti too. I mean, it's so much fun. And you know, I'm more experienced, but I just add like a level of like, nothing phases me because I'm old now in the band. And I think that's valuable, but you know, they're just rocking it. They're amazing. So it's super fun. And, but also, you know, in times of like building career, making choices and stuff, I'm around to offer some, feedback or whatever, like we need to get good photos. And they're like, no, I have a friend. I'm like, no, we're gonna hire a good professional photographer because guess what, Shruti's photo ended up being on the side of a bus, and I'm like, that's why you need to have good photos, because that stuff will happen anyway. So stuff like that, or like veteran-y, like get your website done.
Absolutely.
You know.
It's that's actually that's great advice for everyone out there.
Get good photos.
Just get good photos.
I have great photos.
I
ended up on a billboard because you won your Juno nomination, and someone's driving in Surrey, or Tilden's driving in Surrey, and I'm on one of the big like highway placard things, like. And because I got good photos done. So yay, it's a nice photo. Like yay. Yeah. You just never know.
Get good photos, everyone.
Get good photos.
Yeah. And well, you're definitely open to playing with younger people. I was just listening to Dunbar Heights.
Oh yeah, Millie.
Which I was there for.
Yes, I know. Yeah, Millie and Allison. That was.
I think I hear myself wooing in the crowd.
Yeah,
a couple
I
times.
love the like clapping and the talking and all that. Yeah, that was a fun.
There was too much talking like between.
Like in
tunes.
between.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Millie talking about her tune.
I know, such a vibe.
So good.
Millie's so awesome. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's one of the things with the Ostara Project. Just to lean into that, I'm the oldest person in the band, and kind of Amanda and I co-lead. Amanda Tosop and I co-lead the artistic part, but I'm kind of the band leader, and it's kind of awesome being able to work with these great artists that are a little bit younger.
So how did you and Amanda start at Ostara?
Yeah, so the origin story.
Let's do it.
It was right after the pandemic was starting to lift. It was during the pandemic. Obviously there was a lot going on in social media about Me Too and Black Lives Matter and Every Child Matters, and there was just a lot of really interesting conversations about where we're at in terms of social justice and equity and that kind of thing. So a lot of the projects I'm involved in now had started during that time, which is really interesting. But the Ostara Project is a particularly kind of interesting one in that it's kind of a convoluted story of like a whole bunch of different things happening all at the same time that sort of led to this. We just sort of jumped on an opportunity where there's a great nonprofit out of Calgary called Buckingham Palace, BJP, and they host concerts in their beautiful home. It's Lisa and Tom Buck who host these concerts, and they have a nonprofit. And Lisa reached out during the pandemic to ask me to do some online teaching, basically on their. They wanted to support artists, and they got some funding. And anyway, I'd played at their house, and Lisa and I became good friends. And then she started seeing the the Me Too stuff going on, and it started really asking questions about where all the women. No women band leaders are ever asking to play at my house.
Okay, yeah.
And she was like, "Where are they?" And I'm like, "Oh, they're around. They're like, a bit like rare orca whales or something."
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
if you sight one, you're like, "Oh my gosh, we
Yeah,
just saw an
yeah.
orca whale."
Yeah.
There's especially instrumentalists. There's just not comparatively. I think we're still at like 5 to 8% of the industry. So so there's just not many. She's like, "Well, I really want to try and book them, like give them an anchor gig out here, so to get them, And I'm like, "Great." And so we were just going through a list of the rising stars. I mean, I do keep tabs on my sisters in jazz and what's happening in Canada in particular.
Right.
And I always have. Anyway, in the meantime, Amanda Tosaf and I, when everything shut down, we decided she's one of the best educators I've ever known. And she came to a webinar I did about online learning and inquiry-based teaching and some of the stuff we've been talking about, philosophy. And we just started chatting all the time again. Like, we've been good friends forever. I'm on one of her records, but we just had all this time to chat about her hopes and dreams and our passion for education.
Yeah.
And then we started chatting about, like, we both kept swimming, like we're the fish that kept swimming, and we've both had a lot of professional success. And then the question becomes, is if there was anything we could do, because there were conversations happening. Sometimes they weren't particularly helpful because they kind of focused on the hard stories or the victim stories.
Yeah.
Which need space, and we need to listen to them. But our experience, although we've both had weird things that have happened over the years, has been overwhelmingly supportive.
Yeah.
So how do we use our cultural capital in a positive way became the question.
Right.
For me, I was always like, well, you know what? It was actually Artemis hadn't come out yet. And we were thinking about it around the same time, just as we saw that sort of launch. We were like, oh, great. Rini and Ingrid are doing the same thing. So like kind of gave us a bit of we can do it too. Like, it's kind of,
it's a thing now.
It's a thing. And it's not, but we wanted to put together a band of just really unarguably
just killing
great musicians and band leaders, in particular writers and band leaders and people who were kind of like had a lot of energy to put their music out there and to lead, right? So then right at that time, Lisa pitched this documentary project called Change the Tune about Judy Singh, who was this wonderful vocalist out of Edmonton. She has this crazy story. And then just as Corey reached out to me and was like, I don't have any women on my label. And I was like, yeah.
Yeah, I could have told you that.
And he's like, I need to I feel like I want to do more about that. And so I was like, hey, well, there's this documentary project that it was a specific instrumentation. So that's why we had Jocelyn on, because there was a guitar. It was like we took Judy Singh's singing and then we played on the track with her as part of the documentary. And so I said, this band, and here's the band. And he's like, okay, well, why don't we do a record? And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So we booked it all on that weekend where we played the show at the Bolt, and we recorded a record and a documentary and a video, like all in the same weekend. We'd all just met. Like I didn't know any of them really. I'd met a couple of the women, previously, but a lot of them it's just online.
Yeah.
And it was a really cool weekend. It was an amazing weekend.
Awesome.
And we recorded this record, and the record was like, wow, okay, that was easy. Like the music was very challenging, but we just whipped it off in a day, and everyone just nailed it. And I was like, that was the easiest thing ever. It was amazing. And then the documentary got produced, and Amanda and I decided we wanted to keep going with it. So we did. And our second record is about to come out.
Awesome.
With a different cohort of people again. So there's we're adding names. It's like I wanted it to think of like a sitting around the kitchen table and different people pull up a chair and come and be part of the conversation. So we're kind of sticking with.
Is that what makes it a project?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's not. And the other thing, we toured in the summertime, and Lila Bialy joined us, and Marianne Trudel joined us for a couple of gigs, and they did a gig where Lauren Falls played bass in Ontario, and like so, the idea is that it has a fluidity so that members can come and go. Everyone's busy.
Yeah.
People have their other projects.
It's it's a cross country.
It's a cross country
endeavor.
project where we can weave people in, especially with the vocalist thing, because there's so many outstanding vocalists in Canada. So our next album, Wings, has Emily Kerr-Barlow and Lila Bialy and Dawn Pemberton and Shruti and Terri-Lynn Williams-Davidson, who's a Haida artist I work with.
Cool.
And hopefully Kim Zombik, who's this really amazing, quite under the radar vocalist in Montreal that we've been working with.
Sweet.
So yeah. So so that's the vibe. And
Awesome.
I mean, it's an all-woman band, which is awesome. But ultimately, it doesn't really do any good if the music isn't like excellent. So
Sure. Yeah.
So we're really, the compositions are beautiful, and the writing is amazing. The playing is awesome, and we have such a good time. It's such a good vibe. Yeah. So it's just fun. I mean, ultimately, as I was saying, like, it's a lot of work to do this project, so it has to be fun.
Right.
And we've had just a lot of fun.
There must be this like really kind of like nice uniting feeling about it.
Well, yeah. I mean, I was saying to Tilden the first weekend we did it, I came home and I was like, I was 46 at the time. I said, imagine being a 46-year-old guy and never playing with a group of men.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
I did as a university student with the Sisters in Jazz group with Annette Cohen and Sarah Caswell and Don Clement, all incredible artists who are rocking life. But for the most part, I've been, toured with guys and played with guys and love them, happy. But it was actually pretty emotional that day.
Yeah.
And when people asked me, like, how was it? I was like, I felt relieved.
Yeah.
I was like, because there's this specific experience that I didn't really have many people who understood. I mean, there's a handful of people in town who understand what the journey is like when you're the other in the room, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's as generous and as amazing as the guys are. I'm still not one of the guys.
Well, yeah, exactly.
I'm not.
And I think, so like there's always going to be sort of, I guess, like this background performance that you may need to put on.
Yeah, I've said armor. It's like, I think Esperanza Spalding called it armor that you don't even know you're wearing until you're in a room where you're like, whoa, I don't have to have it on right now. And I feel like as I've gotten older, it's less needed. You know? It's, I think.
And it probably helps to be, play in a group like with your husband and your brother-in-law and stuff.
Yeah.
But even then, still, obviously, there's still, we're all constantly wearing some kind of.
All of us. Yeah. It's not just the gals. It's like we're all trying to figure out our way in this community. And so it's been a real exciting journey. And this next project I'm particularly excited about because the whole idea of the project was to explore essentially this idea of community and the lived experience and the ancestral journey and the stories, the family stories, and perhaps the folk music of our family histories. At this moment in time and on this land, when we're reconciling, we're dealing with truth and reconciliation. What does it mean to be settlers and to have, how to walk this land gently and in community together and not like othering and pointing fingers and, and I felt like, so this project is called Roots, where we all brought music that speaks to these stories. So it's, again, coming back to the analogy of sitting around a table, hanging out. Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, my parents came from blah, and this was one of my stories from my family, or when we were kids, we used to do this or that, or whatever. And the resonance of the music, the art, the culture that lives in our DNA, whether we are, like, I'm third generation from the Ukraine, but when the Ukrainian war hit, my family members spoke Ukrainian, and I was there every summer in Saskatchewan hanging out with my Ukrainian Polish relatives. So, like, I feel deeply connected to this culture. Yeah. Even though I've never been in the Ukraine. So, like, what does that mean? I'm so worried about playing Black American music, and I'm like, I have never really explored Ukrainian folk music. So it's this interesting, like, how does that all mold into one? And that's what and then how are we all like almost like squares on a quilt, making this whole together? Yeah. So that the project's all about that. Awesome. Both of them, Roots, and then the next album, which is Wings, which is the Roots, and then where are we going as a community? What are our aspirations?
So it's not a Paul McCartney and Wings cover album?
It's not a Paul McCartney.
All right. Well, that's I'm sure it's still going to be good.
Mom, are you doing all Paul McCartney covers? Like,
that's funny.
No. Wings is about where are we flying off to? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I kind of do want to ask you about this big show that's coming up in Toronto.
Yes, Massey Hall. Yes,
Oscar.
So it's the 100th. It's the centennial of Oscar's birthday, Oscar Peterson's birthday, and so there's a bunch of interesting gigs and concerts going around all over. But one of the big ones in Canada is at Massey Hall in June. Yeah, and it's a mix of a whole bunch of different people performing. But I was asked sort of like to be the bass player. It's a one night. Okay. So I think the two bass players will be myself and Mike Downs are the two bass players that'll be playing the concert. Yeah. So huge honor. Yeah. Couple of, Oscar, was arguably one of the most important musicians in my life. You
live in Montreal. Did you ever meet Oscar?
No, we did see him play. In fact, I got to open for him at the Orpheum with Ollie Gannon's band. Oh, yeah. Yes. And so I didn't meet him. I was actually too nervous to go. I wish I had. But I did meet NHOP that night. He was there watching us play, which was amazing. Yeah, super exciting. Like a highlight moment. So, yeah, so we got to see Oscar play. He lived in Toronto at that point, not Montreal. Yep. So, and just those albums, all of the albums, particularly with Ray Brown and Ed Thigpen, but also the Herbella stuff. I mean, from the time I really started to get into jazz, they were really important. And I think for me, this idea of like what's like music is emotion and time ultimately. Ooh. And when you think about Oscar, what do you think about? And it is inevitably there's just a joy in his music.
Absolutely.
And an optimism. And as a young musician,
sort of like a childlike,
visceral.
Yeah.
There's just a buoyancy and and the swing thing and the blues and the connection to Art Tatum and Nat King Cole and those power trios of the swing era, right? Yeah. And like how much can you do with three people and just and the feel and also like the way he kind of like Louis Armstrong, like I mean there's these videos of him in Germany in the 60s and I think about Germany had lost the war. World War II was a place of horrific fascist ideology, and yet 20 years later there's Oscar playing with Ray and Ed in Germany to an audience that's just eating it up and there's just no denying their humanity, their brilliance, their intellect, their emotional the sense of connection, the community. He's a powerful figure, and I'm so honored to be. I mean, you have no idea. I mean, this is like full circle. And then, of course, Massey Hall. Like, if you would have asked 14-year-old Samiamu band electric bass playing Jodi, hey, do you know? Here's all the things you're going to get to do. And by the way, you're going to play Massey Hall and a tribute to Oscar Peterson. Yeah. I would have laughed in your face, and probably up until about 10 years ago, I probably would have laughed in your face and be like, "Yeah, no, I'm not worthy of that," and I still don't feel 100% worthy. But now the difference is now, and 10 years ago, is that I just trust that I've been asked to be there for a reason.
Yeah.
So I will show up and I'll give 150%.
Well, the reason is that you're worthy, I think. You got the gig.
Yeah. There's still a part of me, though, when I get these calls, I'm just like, really?
Are you sure?
Are you sure? I don't know, maybe that's, I still feel this sense of disbelief and delight. And that's a good place to be, because none of this is anything I could have even dreamed for myself. I mean, you can't.
But when the gig comes, though, right? I feel like, for me, I've trained myself to try to have an attitude of act like you've been there.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially because I'm playing new stuff all the time, and how serious it is completely up to my brain.
Yeah, totally.
So, for an opportunity like that, which sounds amazing, I'm really happy that you are getting to do this. Why not act like you've been there?
I mean, I think
if anyone has been there or close to there, it's probably you. So
yeah. I mean, I think right at this point in my career, I'm turning 50 this year. So
you're a jazz teenager.
Right.
Yeah.
It's taken a while. It's a long road. Being a jazz musician. When I'm so in a space now where I sort of just trust the journey, and I hold everything really loosely and lightly, and I know that I will do my very best to serve the moment, and that's all I can do.
Yeah.
Eager to just be of service to the music, and that will be enough, inevitably.
Totally, yeah. And I mean,
and have fun with it, because what a delightful thing to get to do. I mean,
you want to have fun. Well, I wonder, because you want to have fun, but I mean, you have fun riding a roller coaster, but you don't want to feel like you're riding a roller coaster necessarily when you're playing.
I mean, I'm not nervous, really. I mean, that kind of I'm not worthy and I'm freaked out. That doesn't happen so much anymore.
Yeah.
I've been through enough of these kind of holy crap, what am I doing here? Situations to just
I mean, I don't
not
think
even think about that.
There's probably not a situation that you can't, competently play yourself out of.
Well, I've been asked to do some situations involving classical music that were a little bit higher stakes for me, and partially because playing Oscar Peterson tunes with other swinging friends, that's my happy place. So so that's just going to be a lot of fun.
Totally, yeah.
When I'm asked to lean into things that are, outside my comfort zone, mostly in the classical music realm, that can create some anxiety. And the other thing that was really interesting which was tough, was when I was at Banff this summer, teaching, or I was one of the mentors at the summer program, which was such, again, a deep deep honor. But I definitely felt a little like, whoa, because like the Shabaka was there and Ganavia and like some very, very big international stars. And, we were playing music with them. And you don't have a relationship, and that takes time. And then you have to make music together. And it was very international. So you're dealing with people from all over the world. So it was a whole other level. Like I realized, my little Canadian cocoon is like a known quantity. I'm part of the ecosystem. I'm a known quantity. But getting out into a situation that was more international was I felt definitely some like fish out of water kind of vibes, which was also really good for me. It was good. I listened a lot and took back seat a lot and you get to kind of like stretch. Yeah, it was definitely a stretch musically. Mentor wise, these were, people who were much more established artists, very, very good, so a whole other level of the student body was very good. So, awesome. What am I going to say to them? I did my best.
Set the vibe.
Yeah, tried to set the vibe for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
Well, I mean, because I wonder, like, you talk about regulating your nervous system. Mm-hmm. And so is there anything, like, specific that you do?
Oh, my gosh.
There's got to be. There doesn't have to be.
Well, I think...
It could be a trade secret if you want. So.
No, I think it's been a long... Just as the journey to learn about music and to get better on the bass or under my understanding of music, it's understanding my own nervous system has also been a long process through a lot of counseling and reading, but also practices that just some practices to keep myself from kind of spinning high and like that energy and just to stay lower and slower.
Yeah.
I journal a lot and I walk a lot and I try and get sleep. A lot of sleep.
Sleep is
really important.
Very important.
I try to eat just the basic things like eat, sleep, breathe. Have a really good bed so I sleep well. And then a lot of it is like I write in my journal every day and I try and think about how do I want to feel in my life. So it's not so much about what do I want to do.
Right.
So my intention is I want to feel ease and I want to feel gratitude.
Yeah.
Flow, connection. Yeah, it's mostly just some serenity. So when things happen that are stressful or hard or surprising or difficult, that I regulate more quickly. And that's taken a long time to figure out how to do.
Sure, yeah.
But it certainly serves me on the bandstand.
Yeah.
And also serves me in productivity because my recovery time from things is greater.
Right.
So I can have hard things that happen and I can have big, strong feelings about it.
Yeah.
But I'm able to kind of get back to, again, to try and be an island of stability on the bandstand and in my own life and in people's lives around me. That's been the goal. It's like, how do I'm more beneficial when I'm jumping into the fire than when I'm able to quiet myself down, assess, and make really slow and low decisions about either it's musical or life choices or with friends. So that's my advice.
So for you, so you're saying it's about the lifestyle. It's about how you're treating yourself all day, right?
Everyday choices, like recognizing when you're tired and stopping and resting and sleeping and cocooning. I listen to a lot of like nature sounds to clear my mind. Cool. Walk in nature. Yeah. So it's just these but also my counseling has been very helpful. So I went to a somatic counselor and we worked on, things get stuck in your body. You have experiences and you have feelings, and if you don't actually let them move through, they can get stuck, and then they get triggered in weird ways. And so, so it's been a long process, but I love counseling. Like everyone should get a good counselor. And also just do really healthy, nurturing things, and surround yourself with, the other thing is surround yourself with people that help you regulate, people that that are grounding for you. Making those kind of choices.
Like I mean, it makes so much sense when you put it that way, because like taking care of your body is taking care of your instrument, because your instrument, I tell my students that all the time. It's like the guitar doesn't play itself. You are the guitar.
Totally.
Right?
Totally.
And so sleep is really important, and I've started journaling too, actually. Yeah. And I find that it really helps with, I have a tendency to rant because I need my thoughts to exist in the real world. So, and I'll just like rant to friends, loved ones, spouse. And that's fine, but it's like pretty time consuming because like I can get stuck in a loop.
Yes.
I can, I won't necessarily like answer any questions, but the rants can help. And also rants tend to come up when I'm walking too. So but the journaling is good, because then I can sort of like try to make my thoughts more concise, and just be like, I'm feeling this way about something. How can I'd like to express it in a way that I can like read and understand it, right? As a document. That's the other thing I like about journaling, is the fact that it's a document of your life, right? Yeah. It's not just like a little activity you get to do. It's like, this is how I was feeling on this day in this year.
100%. Well, I agree. I'm a verbal processor.
Yeah.
So, but also you can repeat your stories and you reinforce stories and not move past. So it's finding a way to change the narrative, and I think I mean, certainly when I'm upset, I need people to talk to about it, but I'm finding that I'm less needing that when I'm getting better at these other things. Like I can kind of like calm myself down, so I don't need to like lob all of my thoughts onto someone's lap. Yeah. And they're like, whoa, okay, wow, and
well, that's what like therapy is really good for too.
Therapy
right?
is amazing.
You're paying someone to listen to.
There's the love, yeah. But I mean, often my therapist, because I would get into like chat, and then this and then that, and she'd say, time out, let's get into the body. We'd go into the body, and the body would be like, then I'd have all these like awake like dreams about like images would show up, and anyway, we would work through. She was amazing, and it wasn't until I got to this somatic work where I worked through some of the things that were really stuck, that it's been a game changer. And I think the only reason I'm director of the program here, really, and doing all this stuff, I'm so much more productive because I'm not navigating the whoa, like, oh no, this thing's happening on the news, and now I'm totally distracted by the injustices in the world, and why aren't more people? I mean, yes, I'm super upset over a lot of the incredible, ridiculous stuff that's happening on the planet right now, and the mean-spiritedness, all the stuff that just. But it's so interesting because of all this work that I've done around my nervous system, how I'm able to not be so reactive. And that serves you well when you actually do want to make change. Because these changes, or being a better musician on the bandstand, it's about that slow and low, and being able, almost like you're moving in slow motion, and you're able to make these micro choices in the moment that are responsive. But this is the state of being that requires you to be,
you need to be able to get there,
connected to your whole body, like fully in your body. And we're getting into the really woo-woo esoteric stuff. But,
yeah.
But ultimately, I mean, I think learning music, and especially improvised music, this process is about connecting with oneself and with one's wholeness, like your sensual body, your connection with others, your intellectual, and your emotions, and you're feeling like you're bigger than. It's bigger than just you, and that's sort of eye-open. Ultimately, all of this is connected somehow, Chris. I don't know how it is, but I just know that I'm like, oh, this state of flow that I get in when I'm playing, how can you have that in your life?
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's all like, how do we just be in that state?
That's, right? No, I like that. Yeah, because it's like, you're able to do that, right? You get to a point where you're able to do that when you're playing music.
You can, and you taste it, and you're like, ah.
And you're like, whoa, I have like an ability to slow down time or something, like, it's like what? And you're like, can I use this in the other parts of my life? How is that? There's got to be. It can't just be music. A flow state happens in all sorts of fields, and so but it's funny. It's different situations make it easier than others, right? Like I always find I have a really hard time being able to get into that state when I'm band leading.
Yes. Totally.
Yeah.
Totally different. I'm better at it now. Like that's the thing, you have to do it. That's the thing about all of this stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, I know we have to wrap up pretty soon, but
probably,
here's my, everybody who's been around me for the last knows I have this on my fridge in my house.
Yeah.
I was listening to another amazing podcast called On Being with Krista Tippett. And there was a Franciscan monk named Richard Rohrarn, who's like a progressive Franciscan monk guy. Mm-hmm. And he talked about order, disorder, reorder.
Okay.
And he says that in life, to have any sort of transformation, you have to go through that cycle. Order, disorder, reorder, order, disorder, reorder. So to tie that into what we were just talking about, all those experiences of me in getting on the bandstand with Charles McPherson or Ed Thigpen or Lewis Nash and feeling disordered was the point.
Yeah.
So that I could reorder things for the next time and the next time and the next time.
Right.
So when people lean into things that are slightly triggering or difficult, it's only through that process of leaning in do you build the capacity to handle more. Right. Yeah. To handle bigger venues, bigger situations, bigger responsibility. And so to run away from it, to run away from challenge, to run away from those situations where you don't feel prepared, which some people do, or avoid even being asked, hide away. Yeah. Doesn't get you into that disorder space, which is where transformation happens. Right, yeah. And disorder can come in a variety of ways. Disorder can come, you're choosing to get into a situation where you're going to feel a bit disordered, and then sometimes life happens. Hard things happen, and it totally throws you off. Yeah. And then we have a choice at that point. We can swim in disorder. We could swim in order. Yeah. But the whole point is to use it to reorder things, to strengthen, whether it's your playing or your relationships or your, the way you're doing life in any way, or your relationship to the big story that's unfolding, in our lives. Yeah. That's the key. And what I've come to know at 50 is that those moments of disorder have been the biggest gift. Yeah. And the resilience only comes from that. Yeah. And then you start to be less afraid of getting into situations that may become disordered. You may be more willing to take risks as you get older.
So is it about embracing disorder, or is it about recognizing disorder?
It's just accepting that it is. Yeah. And understanding too that if you don't perpetuate it by spinning in it and keep it
Right.
when you allow it to move through.
Yeah.
And really see it as an opportunity
Right.
to take a step back and reevaluate and I'm thinking about the fires in Los Angeles right now. Incredible disorder and thousands and thousands of people. And they are going to be forced to reorder their lives. And here's the thing. I mean, this is on a grand scale. There's always the potential that the reordering makes it even better than it was before.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Long term, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes these big things that are happening right now are an opportunity to do things differently. And whether it's in a micro level in your playing or in a macro and world events.
Yeah.
And that's how I'm able to kind of stay relatively regulated.
Yeah, of course. There's an opportunity in
There's
there,
an
right?
opportunity.
As long as you understand. So yeah, I'm getting this now. So it's like you're just seeing everything as part of a cycle. Right? So
it's an orbit.
So you can become frozen in one aspect of that cycle and just decide that that's reality, or you can understand that it's part of the cycle and that eventually it will become disordered, and eventually that disorder will become reordered.
Yeah, it's like the cycle of the seasons.
Yeah.
There's a decay. There's a point at which things start to die and decay, and then they come back again.
Yeah.
So it's allowing that
regrowth,
rejuvenation, renewal, and that can happen in your playing, that can happen in your artistic life.
Yeah.
The other way of relationships, and also there's cycles, and people come into your life for a season, for a reason, or a lifetime. Genre comes into your life for a season, a reason, or a lifetime. Like a certain musical perspective. Okay, so try not to hold.
Yeah, who knows how long you're going to be playing Ukrainian women's choir music?
I know, or Bulgarian. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I mean, it's So exactly, like I don't know how long the Ostara Project is going to go. I mean, it may last for another year or two. It may go on until I die. I don't know. It's the same thing with like this gig here. I mean, who knows? I don't know.
Yeah.
You just don't know. You just don't know. So holding everything really lightly, including how well you did on any one gig or with any famous person, because it comes and it goes, and and it will be what it will be.
And you're probably thinking about it more than anybody else is anyway.
Totally.
Yeah.
You are. No one is worrying about you, or no one's worrying about me. We're worried about ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Totally.
Yeah. And it's always better than you think it went. It always goes better than you think it does.
Totally. Yeah. Of course. Yeah. Man, this conversation got huge.
Big. We got into big philosophical.
Totally.
You can feel free to trim it.
No, it's the best. It's like some of the best stuff that I've some of the best conversation I've had on the podcast so far. I feel great.
I'm so glad. Well, me too. Thank you for asking such beautiful questions and being curious about my experience. I mean, my hope is that if younger folk are listening, that they'll it'll reassure them somehow that it's all part of the process.
Totally. Absolutely. Well, thanks so much, Jodi.
Thank you.
We'll see you around.
You're the best. Thanks for having me.
Jodi's group, the Ostara Project, will be releasing their second album, Roots, on April 11th, with a single dropping very soon on February 7th. I'd like to thank Jodi for coming on the pod, as well as hosting me at her office at the VSO. If you enjoyed our conversation, consider subscribing to the podcast if you're not already. And if you want to be more in the know about all the goings-on in the Vancouver jazz world, don't forget to sign up for the free weekly newsletter at rhythmchanges.ca, where you'll get stories, reviews, and the meticulously updated gig list so you never miss a show again. Thanks as always for listening. I'll see you on the next one.